Please join me in welcoming Mayor Houston.
Well, good afternoon. You know, before we had lunch, I stepped over at the table that was right next to me, and we've got some people from city government. And Fred Puglia was sitting there, and he said, you know, Chief Fuston will buy you a beer if you can work in the fire department and the Convention and Visitors Bureau in a single sentence during your presentation. And I said, Fred, if I do that, will you buy me and Carolyn dinner at Nick and Nino's? And Fred, when are we going? To say my life has changed in the last year is an understatement, and it literally is very amazing to me just how fast the past 12 months has gone by. And one of the things I can tell you, and I can tell you in all honesty, I'm having the time of my life. I'm really enjoying what I've had the opportunity to do. And a lot of people will come up to me and they'll say, well, gee, you know, I wouldn't do this job for all the money in the world. But I knew what I was stepping into. So from that aspect, it really hasn't been a surprise to me in terms of what's involved in being mayor of this community. Unfortunately, Carolyn also knew what we were getting into. And I really have to say that I appreciate the support that she has given me. She really has adapted very, very well to a change in our lifestyle over the last 12 months. And again, thank you very, very much. I feel very fortunate that we have been able to put together a very good management team that is actually managing city government. And for someone who spent approximately 45 years as a manager, I want to emphasize the fact that we are managing city government and that we have a management team that actually does that. And what we're trying to do is not only manage city government, but really stretch some very limited resources as far as they can be stretched to provide services to the people of this community. A year ago, when I attended this luncheon, I had been elected, but I hadn't taken office as of yet. I sat in the audience and I listened to Frank Edwards discuss the dire financial condition of the city. As a candidate, I had said the city had many challenges that went far beyond its financial problems, and that there would be pain if we were to fix those problems. When I was elected mayor the first time in 1979, I walked into a city government that was functioning and that had money. When I walked into city government on May 2nd of last year, I found a much different situation. It was not functioning as it should be, and it was literally broke. When you don't have enough money to be able to operate properly, it causes all kinds of obstacles because you don't have the tools that you need to be able to deliver the services that the people of this community expect. As someone who had followed city government very, very closely, I was aware of the fact that the city was having financial problems. But those problems were far worse than anything that I expected. There is something in city government called the corporate fund, and that's the fund that really pays for the services that you receive on a day-in, day-out basis from city government. It includes our police, fire, public works, which are the basic services that we provide the citizens of this community, as well as things such as our corporation counsel's office, the salary of the aldermen that are here with you, as well as my salary. It pays for almost all the basic services and the things that you receive from city government. For the fiscal year that ended on February 28th of 2011, the city took in a little over $109 million in terms of that fund. As someone who spent almost 24 years in banking after I left city government in 1987, one of the things that I would expect that where you have that much revenue flowing in, that your cash flow and cash position would be pretty good. When we looked at the corporate fund average daily balance for the 220 working days for the fiscal year that ended in February 2011, the average daily balance was just a little over a negative $3.5 million a day. Let me repeat that so that you did not misunderstand what I said. Our average daily balance for the fund that provides the basic services to the people of the city of Springfield had, for 220 working days of 2011, just over a negative $3.5 million balance on a daily basis. And you might ask, well, how could the city operate that way? Well, the city operates with many funds. And the way you operate that way is you put all your money into one account and you just keep writing checks. So if you have something like the Downtown Tax Increment Financing District, and that fund has money in it, which it does, you can just continue to write checks. The same thing was going on in City Water, Light, and Power. The electric fund had borrowed $6 million from the water fund so that it could continue to write checks. Well, one of the things I can report to you today is for the fiscal year that just ended on February 29th of this year, the average daily balance in the corporate fund was just a little over $700,000 a day. It was actually $730,000 a day. That's a swing of over $4 million. And I would also point out to you that in that period, the state went from paying us on what had been a 90-day basis to a 150-day basis, which adds to our cash flow problems. And contrary to what one alderman said on a radio talk show last week, the reason that we were able to produce a surplus of approximately $3+ million in the corporate fund for the fiscal year ended February 29th was that we managed the budget and we managed city government. It was the management team, and it is a management team that controlled spending. Now, the surplus that we had at the end of last year, we took on the last day of the fiscal year, and we paid off about $1.9 million worth of debt that was left when the city council could not balance the budget in 2009. So we reduced that surplus down to about $1.3 million, but we paid off that debt of $1.9 million. 4 years ago, when the city ended its fiscal year, it had 1,720 employees. On February 29th of this year, we ended the fiscal year with 1,526 employees, and that included 20 probationary firefighters who had been hired in January that are actually being paid by a federal grant for a 2-year period of time. If you deduct those 20 firefighters, that brings the number down to 1,506 employees, or a reduction of 214 employees over a 4-year period. And I'm talking about positions that are filled. I'm not talking about vacant positions, because if you wanted to talk about our authorized strengths 4 years ago, the city was authorized to have an employment of 1,770, and at the end of this year, we will have an employment authorized of 1,560. This year, we presented a balanced budget to the City Council, which was pretty much adopted as presented with the exception of the CWLP budget. Most of the discussion that dealt with this year's budget really was centered around the electric rate increase. But let me say this, headcount in city government is very important. Our corporate fund budget projects revenues this year of approximately $111 million. Our police and fire budgets are the two largest budgets in the corporate fund. They account for about $71 million of the $111 million, or about 63% of that corporate fund budget, without any capital equipment. If we put fire trucks and police cars into that, it amounts to about 2/3 of our corporate fund budget. In both the police and the fire department budgets, between 94 and 95% of those entire budgets are spent on personnel and fringe benefits. It doesn't leave a whole lot of money to be spent on other things that are needed other than just paying for people and their benefits. Most departments in city government operate at a 90% plus cost in their budgets of personnel and fringe benefits. So again, once you pay for people and those benefits, there's not a whole lot of money left. In fact, if you look at that whole $111 million, 80% of that money is into people and fringe benefits, and the only reason it's only 80% is because we do things like a street overlay program, which is expensive, and we have to buy equipment. Now, you can put off doing a project, or you can put off buying equipment, but the reality is that at some time in the future, you have to be able to do that project or buy that equipment. The only way that you can have an out-year impact in terms of the city budget is by eliminating positions. And you don't necessarily have that impact in the year you do it, but you have the impact on the out-year basis. And that is why it is important that those of us that are involved in city government, myself, the members of the city council, the department directors, really focus on headcount. Between May 2nd and February 29th, we have eliminated 46 positions in city government. And again, these are 46 positions where there were people in those positions. And we continue to do that anytime we have the opportunity. While no one wants to do that in this economy, it is the only way that we are going to get the city's financial house in order unless people are willing to pay more taxes. And I really get no feeling from people in this community that they want to pay more taxes. We invested a little over $40,000 to do a study by Maximus, which reduced our budget during this current fiscal year by just over $2.4 million. One of the recommendations that we're looking at from that study, which has not been implemented, is to take the 4 vehicular garages that we have and reduce that down to 1 or 2 garages. Currently, the personnel and fringe benefits in those 4 garages amount to $3.75 million a year in terms, again, of salary and fringe benefits. Now think about the savings that we could have by consolidating those 4 garages down to 1 or 2 instead of 4. There are operational overhead duplication and personnel redundancies that will lead to unnecessary cost and inefficiency, leading to really a great potential for significant savings as well as service improvements. We would anticipate that if we did that, we would rearrange our scheduling and add a fully staffed second shift so that when the vehicles should be out on the streets, they can be out on the streets delivering service, and we can do that at a time when they're out of service as opposed to taking those vehicles out of service and having them sit in the shop. Our Public Works Department took a different approach to picking up yard waste this past year, and we were able to expand our pickup period from 2 weeks that had been in the previous years to a 4-week period. And we did that by simply taking a different approach. And we eliminated almost all the complaints from the general public that had been happening during this waste pickup period. What we did was we competitively bid for the first time that service, breaking the city up into 4 quadrants, with the Public Works Department taking the largest quadrant and handling that. And we did it, again, at the same cost for a 4-week period that had been done doing it for a 2-week period in previous years. Code enforcement is something that is a priority of city government. We've intensified our efforts in terms of going after properties with overgrown grass and weeds, and we're taking an actual proactive approach in terms of getting the grass cut as opposed to waiting for somebody to file a complaint. If we mow it, the property owner pays us $250. It's a flat billing, and we're aggressively pursuing getting those bills paid. Last week, for those that you follow the local news, the Bel Air Motel was fined $131,000 for their building code violations. There were actually 470 citations that were issued there that involved mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and building code violations. The MacArthur Park Apartments are trying to fix their code violations, but I will guarantee you that they probably are going to be facing some very significant fines also. We are not going to tolerate property owners who ignore city codes. While the legal process has not yet run its course on these particular properties, we want everyone to know that we are definitely serious about taking action against property owners who allow their property to deteriorate and become health and safety hazards. You know, as you drive around city, you will see an abundance of private investment occurring. There are a lot of exciting things that are happening within our community that are really going to impact our future. You know, when you look at South MacArthur, for an instance, we got the Hy-Vee market that is coming into the old Kmart building, and that's going to be a catalyst for other development along South MacArthur. The city has just established a new TIF district that runs along MacArthur from South Grand on the north to Summit on the south. And just as the downtown TIF has spurred redevelopment in the downtown area, I believe that on a long-term basis, the MacArthur TIF will do the same thing for the boulevard. Further south, as we move towards the new part of MacArthur, just south of the Shield store, we expect to see an 80-store discount mall break ground this year along with a new Holiday Inn. And if you think about the Shield store for just a moment, you have to realize that it wouldn't have been built if someone had not put in the investment to build the infrastructure to put in MacArthur from Wabash down to I-72. As a result, we have a new store that is bringing in new property taxes, new sales taxes by bringing more people to this community to shop and creating jobs and wealth in our community. But without the infrastructure in place, Shields wouldn't have built that store, and none of that would have happened. And now we're seeing further development on both sides of Shields, and eventually, if you think about all the raw land that is out there between 72 and Wabash and Stanford, in a matter of a few short years, all that land is going to be developed, which will create more tax revenue and jobs for our community. White Oaks is undergoing a major renovation in terms of its facility. And what that's going to do, it's going to give them a refreshed approach to retailing and really create some new opportunities for some unique retail type shops. If you think about White Oaks for a moment, and you think how it used to be where you just had the mall in the parking lot, and you think about it today where you have the mall, but now you've got all kinds of stores that are in that parking lot and businesses. You're using that space for additional businesses that once was just a parking lot. We just did a commercial plan for East Springfield, and that plan really centers on East Springfield, particularly around the J.C. Penney's area. Penney's had a major renovation last year, and I would expect to begin to see further development, particularly in their parking lot, just as you've seen around White Oaks. Immediately west of the J.C. Penney store, we've got the new Pepsi plant that is being built that's going to replace their facility on East Cook Street. Again, a major development in that particular area. Another project that is taking place is the Neiman Foods development at the corner of 2nd and Carpenter. The new county market is strategically located to not only serve the downtown area, it will provide a convenient location for near Northside residents, as well as employees in our medical district, including the 2 hospitals and the SIU School of Medicine. It will also include some other services and features and shops that will make it very attractive for those that work in the general area, not even part of the medical community, to be able to make a stop to get things on their way home. This will fill a downtown void that has existed for too many years, clean up a blighted corner, but most importantly, it will act as a catalyst for other projects within that area. The medical community has overtaken state government as the largest employer in the city of Springfield. Both St. John's and Memorial have undertaken major expansion programs that have and will put a large number of people in the construction trades to work for a long period of time. Today, we have representatives with us from Schnucks in St. Louis, and Schnucks has been a part of our community for 17 years. Lori Willis is the Director of Communications for Schnucks, and she is here today representing Scott Schnuck, who is the Chairman and CEO of the corporation. And there is some good news that I would like to share with you. Schnucks is in the early stages of planning a major investment within our community by building 2 new supermarkets in Springfield. One will be located at the corner of Washington and Bruns Lane on 20 acres of land that has been undeveloped for too long. The second store will be located on 10 acres of land in East Springfield, immediately north of the newly remodeled JCPenney store at the southwest corner of Singer Avenue and Dirksen Parkway. Each store will be over 60,000 square feet in size and will include the newest food and culinary innovations, as well as goods and services requested by customers. In each case, Schnucks will be purchasing more land than is needed for their supermarkets and will have space for additional businesses at these locations. The city is in the early stage of exploring the creation of a tax increment district, which will include the area immediately east of the existing TIF area where the Pepsi plant is being built over to the interstate highway. A TIF district will play an integral part in making this development, as well as other development, a reality in East Springfield. This is further testimony to the expanding retail drawing power of Springfield. We greatly appreciate the commitment of this family-owned company to our community, and I applaud you for making the investment. Well, I wish I could stand here and just say that everything is great in Springfield, but I can't do that or say that everything is rosy. We do have some things that I'm concerned about. One is that I will tell you that I expect Moody's that will be dropping CWLP's electric division rating, and it may drop it by more than 1 notch. The current electric division rating by Moody's is 1A, A1, and we currently have about $610 million of electric bonds outstanding at the present time. When that is dropped, the value of those $610 million to the bondholders will also drop. And it will also make it more expensive the next time as the electric division would go out to borrow money for something that they may need in terms of the plant. The U.S. Postal Service is posed to move a significant number of good-paying jobs from East Cook Street to St. Louis. The closing of the Springfield Processing and Distribution Center will literally affect every resident and every business in Springfield and Central Illinois. On average, the Springfield Processing Center handles approximately 19 million pieces of mail a week. It will cause local mail to move from what is now a 1-day local delivery. If you mail something in Springfield, it's there the next day. It'll become a 3-day process because all local mail will be sent to St. Louis. And that 3-day mailing process estimate does not take into consideration that the St. Louis Processing and Distribution Center was ranked as having the second worst record for delayed mail in Type 1 plants in the country by a September 2011 audit report by the Office of the Inspector General of the U.S. Postal Service. May 15th is the deadline for the Postal Service. The Postal Service has set to implement the plan to close this facility unless they are given a relief from the financial requirements that have been imposed by Congress. In addition to losing 188 good-paying jobs at the Springfield Center is closed, we have a number of businesses whose sole business is direct mail, and that will cause these types of businesses to either close or relocate due to the delays of sending mail to St. Louis. As mayor, I consider where the high-speed tracks run through our city to be the major issue facing our community right now. The city, the county, and the chamber, along with many others, have been engaged in what I would literally call a battle to have those tracks on the 10th Street corridor. We expect that the draft environmental impact study with the corridor recommendation to be released sometime during the month of May. Once it is released, it is important and it is imperative that everybody in this room write letters in support of the 10th Street corridor, because our elected officials, as well as the Federal Railroad Administration, really needs to hear with one voice that that is where this community wants that corridor to go. The leadership that's been provided by the Chamber is one of the reasons that I'm optimistic that we will prevail on this issue. Springfield is no different than any other community. We have our challenges, and we really need to deal with our problems. But we can do that, and I believe if we do that, we will have a very, very bright future. And that is what I work to produce on a daily basis. We have a good management team managing city government, and I believe that we're making progress. Looking over the past year, it is clear that we have laid the groundwork for much greater things in the future. I hope that I have given you a small overview of some of the things that are happening which will make our community better, improve the quality of life for all our residents, and allow businesses, whether they are large and small, to continue to be able to flourish and prosper. By working together, we can make our city a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you very much.